There was an article in the New York Times recently where they're basically describing, and even actually in the local paper, where they're describing the 2022 as like the grand resignation year, where everyone's resigning.
Yeah, yeah.
To do what? It still baffles me, right? When people resign, you typically have something to do, but everyone's resigning to do whatever it is, right? And the reason why they're saying is that because people are burned out.
Yeah.
You're a professional athlete. You know what it's like to put your body on the line and literally squeeze the juice out of it when there's nothing left. And so when somebody says burnout to me, it raises all these bells and whistles. But then I remember having this conversation with some friends and even my wife, and I was like saying that, I think maybe because this generation is less resilient, right? Making that comment.
Yeah, possibly.
And she goes like, why? It's like, and then so we go into it, right? And then she just raised a good point, and she said, well, is it maybe less resilient, or maybe their stressors are different? Right?
I think it's a combination of both, to be honest, because we had a similar conversation just last week with Doc JP, and he was saying that what happens now is children are more on their gadgets, right? And when they're focused on their gadgets, they're not learning how to be resilient and finding ways to get something done. Right? Because everything's automatic here, it's thoughtless, you're just doing this, right? Whereas when you're off your gadget and you have to figure out what to do, those kind of teach you how to be resilient. As children, you should be able to do dangerous things carefully, right? And I keep hearing that, and I keep saying that, and I keep seeing people talk about it. It really is. I saw a talk one time, and it was showing a video of a kid just climbing from one sofa to a countertop. And just the parent was just watching, right? And letting the kid do it carefully, watching to make sure, because they learn from these experiences. What are they going to learn from a gadget?
That's true.
Right? And they don't learn how to become resilient.
That's true.
And so I think being on the gadget is one, it's a stressor already because you're just always wanting and addicted to doing something on there. And two, it's not teaching you any resiliency. And I think that
there's no life skills.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, maybe on developing apps or how to use stuff down the road, possibly, right? But as kids, I think they need to be outdoors a little more.
See, I always had this thought, like when it comes to skills, what happens when the power's off?
Yeah.
Like that's the way I always view skills. Yeah. That we should have a hard set of skills where if the power is off and nothing is working, what can you do and what is your talent base?
Yeah.
Or it's like if you're a survivor, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have no electricity. What are you going to contribute? In the real world, when you're disconnected from all of that, I'm like, what is it that you can bring to the table?
Yeah.
And I think we lack a lot of that. And one of the things that digital devices also brings about, and you've probably also been witness to this, is when you have social media in front of you, you just can't help but compare.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're at the beach now.
Yeah.
Oh, they're traveling.
I wish I were traveling. She gets all this, or he gets all that. I hear that all the time.
Somebody made this really nice comment before. It's just like, I don't know, Instagram's like a highlight reel.
Yeah.
You basically just put up
the best version of yourselves, or it's not even you.
No one's gonna put the crappy stuff up on there. I mean, maybe they would for attention, but no one's gonna put it up there like voluntarily. So it's like you don't really get a true picture. But then when you're viewing it, you're always looking at it through a lens where you're just like in comparison too. Yeah. Right? And again, it goes back to that whole mindfulness where you're not present anymore and you're already projecting everything out.
See, you know what? That word projecting, I find, is something new to me, right? Because I never really learned about all this projecting and what other people do or say because of their own insecurities or feelings, right? So, it's something I hear more and more of when I go to a therapist every so often and I'm talking about this person that's frustrating me or and they'll say, look, it's either you're projecting or they're projecting and this is why or how, right? Then you learn it and it just makes you be a little more mindful and this is perfect, and with that, I want us to transition over to the other side so we can get a little more comfortable and talk more about your yogi stuff, the mindfulness.
How I became a yogi.
and how it can help in basic mental health.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
So with that, we'll take a quick break and we'll come right back. Welcome back. We're here with Francis Diano, owner of Pace, and a newly certified yogi?
Yeah, it was my pandemic project.
Awesome. Why don't you give us a little more information about that? Why did you get into it? And and the whole point of today is to kind of discuss, how yoga can help with mind, body, and spirit, and especially in its way of dealing with mental health.
Okay, so my background is so I started as a physical therapist in New York, and I was there for quite some time, and then I moved back here in 2015. So my focus was always on movement and healing, and it was always in a very physical, objective sense, right? Something's broken, wait for it to heal, then we'll move it. And so that's how it was up when I was living in the US. When I moved back here to the Philippines, I started finding ways to make it more holistic. I didn't want it to be just solely about whatever the medical stuff was, but I figured that there must be a deeper connection to why we get hurt. There must be a deeper connection to how a person recovers, right? When a person is hurt, it's not just physically being incapacitated, but there's also a mental incapacitation that we don't deal with.
Yeah.
And oftentimes there's a societal disconnect also. Something as simple as an ankle sprain could be, I can't walk, but then I can't walk leads to I'm afraid to walk, which means to I'm afraid to go out with friends. And so I needed to find a way to kind of attach and put those all together. Yoga for me was just more of a way to communicate and to help everything be grounded a little bit more. You and I could have a conversation in depth about medical stuff, and I could just quote all medical journals and give you all the medical stuff. But at the end of the day, how do I simplify it so that you actually understand it?
Yeah.
How do I reach a greater audience? And so it's not about sounding smart anymore, but it's about being practical. It's about being, what can I do on a daily basis? The reason that led me into taking up my yoga teacher training was because I wanted to actually find ways to communicate and connect with my clients, with the people that I help with better. Now, when people come to see me, they're no longer patients, because I don't look at them as a medical thing solely, but I look at it as a holistic thing. It's like, how can I help your overall wellness? How can I help you become better as a person? How can I help you become a more productive individual in society? And so when we do corporate stuff now, oftentimes you talk about elevating that sense of awareness, elevating that sense of presence that they have, elevating their consciousness to a certain extent where they're able to be more mindful, be more present with what they're doing. Because this day and age, one of the things that we also have is we're highly distracted.
Yes.
If that's one thing the pandemic has taught us, right?
Completely distracted. You have screens everywhere. You have your phone, you have your iPad, laptop, monitors, TV.
Absolutely, and that's one thing we've also come across, like over the past 2 years of the pandemic, is that the more isolated you are, that doesn't mean that you're more focused. The more isolated you are, that you actually tend to be more disconnected, the more you're distracted.
Yes.
Like the slightest bit of noise or the slightest adjustment in light, all of a sudden your brain doesn't know what to do with it, because you're so disconnected from everything. And so the idea behind mindfulness is being able to bring everything back to being present in the moment, and how to kind of take away a lot of those small distractions to allow you to focus at the bigger task at hand, right? And to just kind of filter out the noise.
Yes.
I think that's the best way to describe it. It's that you're taking out a lot of that white noise that's just distracting you from what you're trying to do.
Well, a lot of that noise can be, self-destructive type noise where you're talking badly about yourself, or you're thinking bad thoughts, or you're stressed with work, or you're stressed with home, or you're stressed with so many different things, and you just don't know how to deal with it, right?
Absolutely.
And this is where I think, all this comes in. I love yoga, but I don't do it enough, right? I need to make more time for it, because my body definitely responds really well to yin yoga specifically, right? My longer, deeper poses, stretches, and I feel great afterwards. But I don't do it enough. The spiritual and mindfulness stuff, I never got into it so much or long enough to get to that point.
Yeah.
But I do see the benefits of it.